Lyra had always known she was different. On Vyrexia 7, a mining colony carved into the jagged mountains of a storm-ridden planet, strength and endurance mattered more than intelligence or subtlety. The wind never stopped howling across the metallic cliffs, carrying shards of rock and ice that could slice through even the toughest armor. The colony's workers were a hardy, disciplined species, bred to survive and thrive under the harshest conditions. Lyra was not like them. She was slight, with hands more suited for precise work than heavy lifting. Her movements were careful and deliberate, her mind always calculating, always analyzing. The others called her useless behind her back, though no one said it to her face. At first, she tried to prove herself. She pushed her small frame to lift heavy crates to dig through rock, to keep pace with the rest of the crew. But no matter how hard she tried, exhaustion would set in faster and the others' patience would wear thin. Her mistakes were minor, mechanical errors or slow reactions. But on Vyrexia 7, every second could mean life or death. One day, the crew descended into the lowest tunnels of the mining colony, chasing a rare mineral vein that glimmered faintly in the dark. The tunnels were narrow, unstable, and slick with water and alien moss that made the walls glimmer in strange colors. Lyra followed, carrying her tools and sensors, trying to keep up. The leader of the crew, a broad-shouldered veteran named Krath, glanced at her and shook his head. "Lyra," he barked. "Stay close and don't get in the way." She nodded, her stomach tightening. She knew what that meant. She had seen it in his eyes before. Disappointment, frustration, disgust. She swallowed her fear and moved carefully, watching the walls and floor for weaknesses, studying the structure while the others hacked away at rock. Her small frame allowed her to squeeze into spaces the others could not. But when a sudden tremor shook the tunnel, a chunk of rock fell near her feet, narrowly missing her. The others ignored it, continuing their work. Lyra's heart pounded in her chest. She wanted to shout, to warn them, but she knew they would not listen. They never did. Then the disaster happened. A massive section of the tunnel collapsed, burying crates, equipment, and part of the pathway. Lyra froze, paralyzed by fear. She could hear the others shouting, scrambling to dig themselves out, their voices echoing in the confined space. She tried to move, but her small hands could not shift the debris fast enough. She looked around, desperate, and realized with horror that Krath and the others were abandoning her. "Move!" Krath shouted from a safe distance. "We don't have time for her." Her chest tightened. "Wait, I can help," she screamed. But her voice was swallowed by the roar of falling rock. The crew disappeared into the darkness, leaving her alone with only a few broken tools, a damaged survival suit, and a small pack of rations. The realization hit her like a physical blow. She was alone. They had left her for dead. For a long time, Lyra sat in the rubble, the cold seeping into her bones, the echoes of her former companions' voices fading into silence. Her mind raced, teetering between panic and despair. How could they abandon her so easily? What hope did she have now in these tunnels, where even a simple mistake could mean death? Then amid the fear, a spark of determination flickered. She could not rely on others. She would have to rely on herself. Slowly, carefully, she began to examine the rubble around her. Broken mining equipment lay scattered in the dirt. Drones with damaged circuits, old energy packs, and cracked sensors. Her fingers moved deftly, pulling wires, reassembling components, testing each piece. Hours passed, then days, and she slowly transformed the wreckage into tools she could use. She repaired a small drone and rigged it to scout ahead, its sensors scanning for safe paths. She patched her survival suit with scrap materials, sealing small holes to keep the cold at bay. Lyra's intelligence, which had been dismissed by the others as useless, became her greatest weapon. She improvised, adapted, and survived in ways the crew had never imagined. She mapped the tunnels, marking dangers and safe zones, setting traps for small predators that roamed the dark passages, and finding hidden caches of minerals and water. The more she worked, the more confident she became. She realized that her survival did not depend on brute strength or speed. It depended on her mind. During one particularly long night, she discovered an ancient maintenance corridor, long forgotten by the colony. Its walls were lined with dormant machines, long-abandoned drones, and strange alien devices she did not recognize. Lyra's eyes lit up with curiosity. She could feel her excitement building as she approached a large panel, its surface covered in dust and grime. With careful hands, she cleaned it and studied the controls. The technology was unlike anything the miners used now, old but ingenious, capable of monitoring and controlling large sections of the colony. Lyra realized that she could use these systems to her advantage. If she could power them up, she could control lights, ventilation, and even the automated mining bots left behind. She could create safe zones, secure food and water, and protect herself from the dangerous creatures that prowled the tunnels. Her mind raced with possibilities. The very machinery her former crew had ignored or deemed irrelevant could be the key to her survival. As days turned into weeks, Lyra worked tirelessly, never resting, never giving in to despair. She grew stronger in ways that had nothing to do with physical power. Her mind became sharper, her reflexes quicker, and her ability to adapt to any situation unparalleled. She learned to predict the movement of predators, to find the safest routes through the tunnels, and to repair equipment that even the veterans of the colony could not fix. One evening, as she watched the dim glow of her repaired drones sweep across a cavern floor, Lyra allowed herself a small smile. She was alone, yes, but she was not helpless. She had been abandoned, but she had found a strength the others had overlooked. Her so-called uselessness had forced her to discover her true worth. Lyra's thoughts often wandered to her former crew. Would they remember her? Would they regret leaving her behind? She tried not to dwell on it. The past was gone. What mattered was the present and the future she was building for herself. And in that future, she would no longer be invisible, no longer dismissed. She would survive, and one day she might even thrive. The planet outside raged on with storms, lightning flashing across jagged peaks, winds howling like ancient spirits. Inside her hidden world, Lyra moved with precision, her hands flying over wires and circuits, her mind alive with possibilities. She rigged a system of alarms and lights to signal any intruders, setting up defenses that could rival the best-trained guards. She even began experimenting with combining alien technology and mining drones, creating small machines that could carry supplies or perform complex tasks she could not do alone. One night, as she adjusted the circuits of a drone, she paused and looked at her reflection in a polished metal panel. She barely recognized herself. Her face was streaked with dirt and grime, her clothes patched and torn, but her eyes shone with determination. She was no longer the timid, underestimated engineer who had been left for dead. She was a survivor, a thinker, a creator. The label of useless no longer held any power over her. Lyra knew that her journey was far from over. The tunnels of Vyrexia 7 were vast, full of hidden dangers and secrets. There were creatures that could kill with a single strike, unstable rock formations that could crush her at any moment, and a planet that seemed to take pleasure in testing her every limit. But she was ready. She had learned to observe, to calculate, to anticipate. Every challenge became an opportunity to prove her worth, to turn danger into survival, to turn the impossible into achievement. As the first faint light of the distant sun filtered through cracks in the tunnel ceiling, Lyra climbed a ridge of rock she had reinforced with alien machinery. She looked out over the maze of tunnels she now controlled. The colony above was distant, the sounds of the storm muted by layers of stone. She felt a strange sense of peace. She had been abandoned, yes, but in that abandonment she had found herself. She had found her strength not in muscles or weapons, but in her mind, her heart, and her determination. For the first time, Lyra allowed herself to hope, not just for survival, but for something more. She did not yet know who might come to find her, or if she would ever see another being again, but she knew that when they did, they would see her true worth. They would see the brilliance, the ingenuity, the courage that had allowed her to endure what no one else could. And when that day came, she would be ready. Lyra returned to her workshop, her hands steady, her mind focused. She began the meticulous process of repairing a massive drone that had been buried under rubble. As the parts clicked and whirred into place, she felt a thrill of excitement. This machine, once considered useless and broken, would become her ally, her protector, and a symbol of everything she had achieved. She smiled to herself, thinking of the crew that had abandoned her. They had underestimated her. They had no idea what she was capable of. The tunnels of Vyrexia 7 stretched endlessly before her, dark and dangerous, but Lyra no longer feared them. Each shadow, each rockfall, each predator was a challenge she could meet. She was ready for whatever came next. She was no longer the one left behind. She was Lyra, survivor, inventor, and soon, and deep in her heart, she knew that someone. Lyra had settled into a rhythm of survival. Each day she navigated the labyrinth of tunnels with the precision of a mind that never rested. The drones she had repaired scouted ahead, their sensors scanning for dangers she could not see. Water and food were rationed carefully, and the small machines she had built carried supplies between the hidden chambers she now called home. She had turned the abandoned parts of the colony into a fortress of ingenuity, a place where she could survive despite the cruelty of her former crew. One evening, as the faint glow of the alien machinery reflected off the metallic walls, she noticed something unusual on the scanner of her largest drone, a signal, different from the usual vibrations of rock or the movements of creatures in the tunnels. It was faint, but it pulsed with a rhythm that suggested intelligence. Lyra's heart beat faster. She crouched beside the drone, adjusting its sensors to pinpoint the source. Humans. She recognized their energy signatures immediately. Humans were rare in this sector, known for exploring dangerous planets for resources or salvage. They were curious, persistent, and remarkably resourceful. Lyra's mind raced. Would they see her as another creature to exploit, or would they understand her worth? She did not have long to wait. The first human appeared at the entrance to one of the deeper tunnels, a tall figure silhouetted against the harsh light of their landing craft above. His movements were careful but confident, suggesting experience in navigating dangerous terrain. Behind him, two others followed, scanning the walls and floors for threats. Lyra watched from the shadows, clutching a small tool in her hand, unsure if she should reveal herself. "Captain Ward," one of the humans said. "The readings are stable. This sector hasn't been touched in decades." "Good," the man replied. His voice was calm, measured, but there was a hint of excitement underneath. "Keep your eyes open. Something or someone might still be down here." Lyra's heart leapt. That tone, that careful attention, reminded her of what she had longed for. Someone who could see potential where others saw weakness. She decided to wait, observing their movements, noting the tools they carried and the way they navigated the tunnels. They were skilled, yes, but inexperienced with the peculiarities of this colony's older machinery. That gave her an advantage. Over the next few hours, the humans moved cautiously through the tunnels, following the drone's signals. Lyra stayed hidden, silently adjusting her alarms and devices to test their reactions. She was not ready to trust them yet, but she was curious. Each time they passed a corridor she had reinforced, they paused, noticing subtle changes in the environment that indicated someone had been here before. Finally, Captain Elias Ward, the tall human who seemed to lead the group, stopped and crouched beside a small drone that had been partially buried under rock. He examined it carefully, lifting it with gloved hands. "This isn't native," he said softly. "Someone's been here. Recently." Lyra took a deep breath. She had been careful, but she realized that no amount of secrecy could hide the traces of her work forever. Slowly, she stepped out from the shadows, her small frame tense, her hands raised slightly to show she meant no harm. The humans froze, their weapons trained on her. "I won't hurt you," she said, her voice steady despite the adrenaline surging through her body. I live here." Captain Ward studied her carefully, noting the grime and scratches on her suit, the careful precision of her movements. He did not lower his weapon, but there was no aggression in his eyes. "You survive alone?" he asked. Lyra nodded. My crew left me. I was abandoned. I've managed to make this place safe." The humans exchanged glances, clearly impressed. Captain Ward stepped closer, examining the drones and equipment Lyra had repaired. "You've done all this yourself?" he asked, a hint of wonder in his voice. "Yes," she replied quietly. I had no choice." Ward crouched beside her, reaching out to touch a repaired panel. "This is incredible. You've turned a death trap into a functional base. Most people wouldn't survive a day, let alone weeks." Lyra's chest tightened. "I didn't survive because I'm strong. I survived because I had to think. Because I had to find ways the others couldn't see." The humans nodded, understanding dawning in their eyes. Ward glanced at the others. "She's not just surviving. She's thriving. We need to get her out of here and study these systems. Imagine what we could learn from her knowledge." Lyra shook her head. "I don't want to leave, not yet. There's still so much to do here, and I don't trust anyone yet." Ward smiled gently. "I don't expect you to trust us immediately, but we can help. You don't have to survive alone anymore." Over the next several days, the humans worked alongside Lyra. She taught them how to navigate the tunnels safely, how to use her repaired drones and machinery, and how to avoid the hidden dangers that lurked in the darkness. In turn, they shared their technology, portable energy cells, sensors, and tools that allowed her to expand her operations. Slowly, a bond formed, built on mutual respect and recognition of ability rather than strength or stature. During this time, Lyra learned more about humans than she had ever known. They were curious, persistent, and determined to understand rather than judge. Captain Ward, in particular, had a way of seeing potential where others saw failure. He never dismissed her ideas, never questioned her decisions without reason, and never made her feel inadequate. For the first time since being abandoned, Lyra felt seen. One day, while exploring a particularly unstable section of the tunnels, they discovered evidence of sabotage. Portions of the tunnels had been weakened deliberately, and some of the mining equipment had been tampered with to fail. Lyra's heart sank. Her crew hadn't just abandoned her, they had tried to ensure she wouldn't survive. Ward examined the evidence carefully. "They wanted you gone," he said quietly. "They didn't just leave you. They tried to make sure this place would kill you." Lyra's hands clenched into fists. She had always suspected betrayal, but seeing it confirmed in front of her was a shock. "Why?" she whispered. "Because they couldn't see your worth," Ward replied. "They judged you by their standards of strength, speed, endurance. They didn't see your mind, your creativity, your ability to adapt. They saw weakness and rejected it. We see it." Her chest tightened with a mixture of anger and relief. For the first time, someone recognized what she had always known about herself. She wasn't useless. She was extraordinary. Together, they repaired the sabotage, reinforced the tunnels, and even began expanding Lyra's systems with human technology. They created automated supply lines, improved surveillance, and developed protective measures that could withstand the planet's most violent storms. Lyra's confidence grew with each passing day. She no longer felt the sting of abandonment as sharply. Instead, she focused on building, creating, and surviving with purpose. One evening, after a long day of work, Ward and Lyra stood together in a chamber high above the main tunnels. The wind howled outside, rattling the metal walls, but inside the air was calm. Drones hovered silently, carrying supplies and monitoring the tunnels. Lyra watched them move, a sense of pride swelling in her chest. "You've done something incredible here," Ward said, his voice quiet in the hum of machinery. "Most people wouldn't see what you see. Most people would have given up long ago." Lyra shook her head. "I had to keep going. I had no choice, but it feels different now. Having someone who understands. It makes all the difference," Ward smiled. "You'll do more than survive now. You'll thrive. And when others see what you've done, they'll understand your worth too. Not just humans, but anyone who thought you were useless." Lyra's mind drifted to her former crew. She no longer felt fear or despair at the thought of them. Instead, a quiet resolve settled in her heart. One day they would learn that leaving her behind was a mistake, but she would not seek revenge. Her strength was not in violence or retaliation. Her strength was in creation and survival, in the recognition of her own worth. As the days passed, Lyra and the humans continued to explore and secure the tunnels. They uncovered ancient alien machinery that had lain dormant for centuries, and reactivated systems that improved ventilation, energy flow, and even communication with distant parts of the colony. Lyra's skills and the humans' technology complemented each other perfectly, forming a partnership built on respect and ingenuity. Lyra found herself thinking differently about the universe. She had believed it to be harsh, uncaring, and full of beings who would exploit weakness. But through her connection with the humans, she began to understand that there were others who could recognize potential, nurture it, and help it grow. Her world, once defined by fear and abandonment, now held possibilities she had never imagined. One night, as she rested beside a humming energy core, she reflected on how far she had come. She had survived the betrayal of her own kind, mastered the abandoned tunnels, repaired machines that were thought lost forever, and formed a bond with beings who saw her for who she truly was. Lyra realized that her journey was not just about survival. It was about proving the value of intelligence, adaptability, and courage. She had been abandoned, yes, but she had been given a second chance by someone who believed in her. Lyra woke to the hum of her drones, their lights casting faint shadows across the walls of the tunnels she had transformed into a thriving fortress. For weeks, she and the human crew had worked tirelessly, combining her ingenuity with their technology to turn what had once been a death trap into a functional outpost. Every corner of the colony now reflected her brilliance, Reinforced tunnels, automated supply lines, energy-efficient lighting, and small machines carrying out tasks she once did by hand. The tunnels that had once threatened her life now bent to her will. Captain Elias Ward stood beside her, scanning the control panels of a massive repaired drone. His human technology was seamlessly integrated with Lyra's own designs, each improvement amplifying the other's strengths. "You've outdone yourself," he said quietly. "This place isn't just safe anymore, it's remarkable." Lyra smiled, though her thoughts were elsewhere. She had long accepted that her former crew had abandoned her for being useless, but she had proven to herself, and soon to others, that their judgment was wrong. She no longer sought their approval or feared their opinion. Her worth was clear to her now, and it would be undeniable to anyone who saw what she had accomplished. The humans had brought additional equipment, sensors and communication devices that allowed them to send messages beyond the planet. Lyra's creations now had the potential to impact more than the tunnels of Vyrexia 7. They could serve as models for survival in extreme environments across the galaxy. The thought filled her with quiet pride. Her mind had always been underestimated, but here, it was the most valuable asset of all. One afternoon, while testing a new series of drones that could transport larger loads through the tunnels, Lyra detected movement near the colony's old entrance. She quickly activated alarms and observation drones. Shadows shifted and she saw figures approaching, figures she recognized instantly. Her former crew. They had come back. Fear and anger surged through her, but she forced herself to remain calm. She watched as they hesitated at the entrance, likely astonished by the changes they could see even from a distance. Their leader, Krath, stepped forward cautiously, scanning the fortified tunnels. He would not have expected her to survive, much less thrive. Lyra stepped out from behind her control panel, her posture confident, her gaze steady. "I see you finally decided to check if I was still alive," she said, her voice calm but firm. "Welcome to what you abandoned." Krath's eyes widened. He took a cautious step forward. "Lyra, you never expected me to survive because you judged me by your standards," she interrupted. "Strength, speed, endurance, none of these mattered. You ignored what really mattered: intelligence, creativity, adaptability, courage. That is what kept me alive." The crew looked around, their expressions a mixture of shock, disbelief, and shame. The tunnels were no longer the dangerous, crumbling paths they had left behind. Lights glowed along reinforced walls. Drones hovered and moved efficiently. Supplies were carried automatically. Even the predators that had roamed the tunnels were no longer a threat. Automated defenses kept them at bay. Captain Ward stepped forward, placing a hand on Lyra's shoulder. "This is her work," he said, his voice carrying authority. "She survived when you left her for dead. She didn't just survive, she turned this place into something extraordinary. You have no right to judge her now." Krath opened his mouth to speak but closed it again. He had no words. His pride, once unshakable, crumbled in the face of undeniable proof. Lyra saw it all. The fear, the regret, the recognition that they had underestimated her in the most foolish way possible. Lyra took a deep breath. "I don't want revenge. I don't need to punish you. Your opinions no longer matter to me. I survived. I thrived. And that is enough." Her former crew stood silently, unable to respond, witnessing the strength that had been born from their cruelty. Lyra realized that her true victory was not in their shame, but in her own accomplishments. She had transformed herself from a supposedly useless engineer into a force capable of surviving and innovating where others could not. In the following days, the human crew and Lyra explored the deeper tunnels further than ever before. They discovered abandoned alien systems that had lain dormant for centuries. With Lyra's skill in human technology, they reactivated these systems, creating energy fields, environmental controls, and communication networks that made the colony even more sustainable. Lyra's designs were incorporated into human protocols for other colonies, showing that her work had value far beyond the tunnels she had once called home. Captain Ward often paused to observe her as she worked, his respect evident. "You know," he said one evening, "I've seen a lot of survival stories, people who make it through the impossible, but what you've done, it's different. You didn't just survive, you created, you improved. You taught those machines to think in ways no one expected." Lyra paused, considering his words. "I had no choice," she said softly. If I had wanted to survive, I had to think differently. I had to see things others could not see. That's all. Ward shook his head, smiling. No, that's more than survival. That's genius. And it's what makes humans, and others like you, extraordinary. You turned weakness into strength in a way most people never understand. Lyra's heart swelled with pride. She had finally found someone who could see her not for what she lacked, but for what she had to offer. The bond she shared with these humans became more than partnership. It became trust, respect, and the quiet assurance that she would never again be dismissed as useless. As word spread across the galaxy of her survival and achievements, Lyra received messages from other colonies and explorers. They were amazed by the outpost she had built, the systems she had restored, and the ingenuity she had demonstrated. Some sought her guidance, hoping to replicate her methods in other dangerous or abandoned worlds. She had become a symbol, a testament to what could be accomplished when potential was recognized. Nurtured and allowed to flourish, one day, Lyra returned to the surface of Vyrexia 7, standing at the edge of the colony overlooking the jagged cliffs and storm-lashed valleys. The wind whipped around her, but she did not flinch. This world, which had once seemed cruel and unforgiving, now lay beneath her command, a landscape she had learned to master. She looked up at the sky, where the faint glimmer of distant stars shimmered, thinking of the humans who had seen her true worth and helped her realize it. Her thoughts drifted briefly to her former crew. They had abandoned her out of fear and prejudice, but she no longer felt anger. Instead, she felt a quiet satisfaction. They had underestimated her, yes, but that had allowed her to discover what she was truly capable of. Their judgment no longer held power over her. She had proven to herself, and now to the galaxy, that worth could not be measured by brute strength alone. Captain Ward approached, placing a hand on her shoulder. "Are you ready?" he asked. "We have other colonies that could benefit from what you've learned here." Lyra nodded, a small smile on her lips. "Yes, I'm ready. It's time to show the galaxy what's possible when people are given a chance and recognized for their true abilities." Together, they returned to the outpost where drones hummed and systems operated flawlessly under Lyra's guidance. The humans respected her expertise, and she led the expansion and adaptation of the colony with confidence. Her work became a blueprint for survival in extreme conditions, proving that ingenuity, courage, and determination were as vital as physical strength. Months later, as Lyra watched the first human ship leave Vyrexia 7 after delivering additional supplies and technology, she reflected on her journey. She had been abandoned, judged, and underestimated, but she had survived. She had learned, grown, and thrived. And she had discovered the most important truth, that true worth is not determined by what others see, but by what one can create, endure, and achieve. Her drones moved through the tunnels, carrying supplies and performing tasks she had designed them to do. The colony she had built was no longer a place of fear and danger. It was a testament to resilience, intelligence, and human recognition of potential. Lyra stood at the control panel, her eyes scanning the readouts, and felt a sense of fulfillment she had never known. And somewhere in the galaxy, people would hear her story. They would know that even when judged useless by those who failed to see her worth, Lyra had risen above. She had survived, innovated, and thrived, and she had done it not alone, but with those who recognized potential where others saw weakness. Lyra's story became a beacon for those who had ever been underestimated. She showed that survival was not just about strength or endurance. It was about ingenuity, courage, and the willingness to adapt. And as the storms of Vyrexia 7 raged on inside the tunnels, Lyra smiled. She was no longer abandoned. She was seen, valued, and unstoppable. The galaxy would remember her, not for the weakness others had once imagined, but for the brilliance, determination, and heart that had turned a lonely, abandoned engineer into a force of innovation and hope. Lyra had found her place, and nothing could take it from her.